So when I first received notice about speaking here, I must admit I'd never heard of Matera before, and did a little research. And when I first started visually looking at what the Société de Matera looks like, what really caught my eye as a designer, I'm a designer and a designer in technology and user experience, so that's my background. But when I looked at these wonderful cave dwellings and ancient dwellings, what caught my eye was really the windows. That's a little hard to see there, but that's a view out one of the rectangular windows in these spaces. And I began to think that certainly it's at least the windows that relate to what if we look at the future and we look at digital. Let me tell you why. And that is because one of the ways that I've looked at screens, particularly in television or in a tablet design or at a screen on a mobile phone, is that I see it as a window. I mean, it's a window of media that's introducing some other content of some kind, some other experience that's coming through to that rectangle that's there. So there's this, we've been sort of committed to a rectangle for some years. And you might think that looking back, going way back to the first buildings that were built in this area, when they put a rectangle in there, that you could look at that as the first media in some way. That's the first. It's a dynamic media. Certainly it produced light for the space, but what was outside, what you saw from inside looking out, you would see the changing sky, the changing from day to night, and that could be a way of looking at the first media. So this chart up here is one that I have worked on going back to maybe 15 years ago. And this is what it looked like. But I've evolved it over time in thinking about what the future would be, and when that last slide down there. So I looked at things like print, for example, posters and printed media before we had digital media. And then look at the next one. With photography and with film and video, we start to think of that rectangle, that screen that's in front of us, as a window, and things move around in there. And you see big screens, maybe IMAX. Another key point there is the transition at some point where we started to make that interactive. It's as if we're reaching our hand through that window and we're moving things around. We have some control over it, in interaction with it. And this, again, 15 years ago, I thought, well, maybe the next stage in the future, maybe was it 10 years from then, or was it 20 years, that maybe we would step through that rectangle. This rectangle, as a designer, I've lived with this rectangle for many, many years, in my entire career. I thought, do we step through that? And I experienced at TED2, the second TED conference in the 80s, I experienced virtual reality, where I put it's similar to Oculus in a way, but it was a long time ago, so it had lots of wires coming out of it. And I experienced this, but you essentially step through the frame and you're now in an environment. You walk around in this space. It's kind of a wonderful experience. But I thought, well, maybe that's where we'll go. That's where it goes. But I've since then started to think of another way that maybe this is headed. We still may have screens, but the screens are defining space. They're doing something different. So certainly with stereo 3D, which I've always had a fascination with stereo 3D, where this screen becomes a window. Objects come right toward you, or you see things in the distance. It creates a space. And then certainly with augmented, like this, right? So that change there that happened from going from this to this. Another change that happened is in augmented reality, where being able to sort of take the screen that was there, the window essentially, and put it right up to your eye on the glass. And you're able to look through it and augment things. So it was less about virtual reality where you sort of left this behind, but you're actually looking at objects and looking at media, looking at television and augmenting it. So that's what I'd like to talk about, and about how that might relate to something, and actually how we navigate and how that relates perhaps to Matera and the ancient world and the past. So that's some modifications I've made. So in the ancient world, you have a window, you have things that are outside, things that are inside, and you're a viewer. Bringing that way to the future and to screens, screens have a surface, in design. If you watch television and you watch a sporting event, you see things that are sort of like a dashboard. They're stuck to the screen. The information, the TV world calls them lower thirds. There's lots of information that's to the screen. Then you see past that, you see to the content. What I'd like to propose is this new area, which is between the screen and the viewer. This is a new space, which has several ways that it can operate, and it's a new way of defining a space. There are two kind of case studies I'd like to give for what I'd like to talk about regarding those two things, that new space. And one of them is a movie that's fairly recent called the movie Her. And this movie, if you've seen it, is unusual because it does something like what Minority Report. Years ago, I mean back in around 2001, 2002, when Minority Report came out, that was the way we saw the future and we saw what it looked like. But the movie Her is doing something different, and we'll talk about that. The other thing is I'd like to bring, there's some research I've been doing around something called augmented television, and I want to show you what that looks like. So this is, if you've seen the movie Her, this is just a snapshot of what television looks like, where it's more about the space in front of the TV and the space through it than the screen has kind of gone away. And it's a very interesting experience, and I think that could be what the future of television is. It's not just this flat screen in front of us. And there's an interesting quote that I found from the gentleman from the movie who was the graphical futurist designer, and he said, the movie is about design in the sense that design is transparent. So what he's getting at there, if you've seen the film, when you watched Minority Report years ago, you saw lots of things. You saw lots of big screens and glass, and you saw interfaces and objects and even gloves on his hands. So there were things involved. When you look at the movie Her, you don't see a lot. It's gone. It's disappeared. And I think that's where we're headed. That's a more accurate vision of the future that I see, of simplification and disappearance of interface, disappearance of things. Going to the example of the research that I was talking about, that's called In Air, this is showing a window, it's a little hard to see there, but in the background there's your TV as a window. You see things through it, which is the media that's coming through your cable. But in front of that is a combination of other things from the internet. So that combined layering is actually a new medium. Just another shot of what that looks like. This is around maybe a recording of the Olympics. And it's, again, layering web content in front of the screen that you interact with in different ways. And here's a sporting event. So this is showing kind of what, if we were to look at it from the side, you would see this, and then if we moved around, you would see that it converges into this sort of layered experience that you navigate, and the way you navigate is actually quite interesting. So it's this new interface space in front of us. So another way of looking at it is you see things through the screen maybe in a 2D television, and maybe with a 3D television, it just pushes that out into the screen, so it's in that space I was talking about in front of you. Back again, and then out in front of you. So that sort of transition between the two spaces. The space that's in front of the screen, by the way, is many of us are already in this space, and we're working with the web. We're doing it with objects in front of our hands. And if I ask for a showing of hands, there are probably many of you who watch television with your mobile handy or with your tablet, and you're doing things that either related, or you're checking your Facebook, or you're doing other things. It's more of a multiplicity of things. This new research that I was talking about within Air is taking some of that stuff that was put on the second screen and bringing it up into the viewpoint and navigating it, so it becomes a single kind of pure experience. The other kind of fascinating thing about it, I mean, and here there's two ways of doing it. I mean, you can use a 3D TV to push it out, or you can bring it from glasses. There are a number of ways to kind of create this effect of graphics in space, I'll call it. But a very interesting feature of that is I've been for many years in the world of television, and some of you are in the world of television here. That behind the screen, the cable or the satellite, the pipes that bring the media to your television are, I can tell you, are highly controlled. There are some things that you can't do because there are rules and regulations about viewing this against that brand and this thing over there. It's all quite controlled. What's interesting to me is that when the viewer, when we hold our device in front of us there, we can pair this together. We can look at other web things that may be contradictory to what's on the TV screen, and no one tells us that we can't do that. This space in front of the television between us is a viewer-controlled space, and I see it as something like a frontier of a new way of navigating information. Now here are some examples. This example is a way that you navigate, and you would use, there are several ways to navigate. One is using Connect. So if you're using a 3D TV and the objects float out in space, it's like you're grabbing them and moving them across with your hands with Connect. Or you can use the Leap. But one of my favorite ways, I'll show you here, is using just your mobile phone and the app itself to navigate. Your phone becomes a trackpad. There's no graphics on it. You don't have to look at it. You just move things around in the screen. So imagine that you're doing that. I'll pretend like I'm navigating it here, but if you open it up and it brings in some possible interactive possibilities. You see some things from The Guardian. You see keywords there, which is that middle one. If you click that and move it across, it brings in and finds the keywords related to that. That's what's playing in the background is House, a TV series. So it brings up things like the name of the actor. It brings up like the producer, which is in Fox, or the name of the program, which might direct you to other kinds of web information. So if you choose Hugh Laurie, you pull that across, take your hand moving it across. It brings and introduces links to, it links automatically to websites and other web information. Things that you might have had to do manually down here with your phone or with another device, but it does it automatically for you in the space that's there. You're navigating with your hands. So it's trying to create the experience of making this new medium of like layered information. When you're done, you just sweep it over like this. You take it down, you sweep it out like that. So I'd like to show you a few, at the end here, a few examples of what this looks like in video. What I would love to have shown you would have been to show, I've done it before, where you can see this in 3D and you can navigate it and experience it. But this particular space has some difficult challenges, so we weren't able to do it. But I can show you what it looks like. So use your imagination, and when you see graphics coming in front of it, imagine that it's floating in front of you. So here's an example of taking an existing app. This is an app for Formula One, and you move your hand up and down, you grab it like this, pull it across, and it's bringing up the app information, which is the lineup of the first, second, third, fourth, the ranking, and there's actually a three-dimensional track, live track in front of it, and onboard cameras and other things. So you're navigating this simply by moving your finger across this, moving it up and down, moving it across and over, and now you bring in extra information about the individual drivers. So again, this is all web information accessed immediately through and in line of view without having to take your eye off the game, which is in the distance. So another example is, this is a factual program that is on the Voyager program, the NASA Voyager. So if you find this NASA element down there, pull it across, it opens up a number of things, one being even a 3D model. So if you kind of double tap on your screen, in 3D this is really wonderful. That model is in 3 dimensions and works in front of you. It looks like Iron Man. You move this thing around in front of you. So I see this as the future, this being able to kind of expand television into the living room, basically. So you can see other pieces of information. Some of it is coming up from Wikipedia, so it's a lot of open source information coming in. Or it could be provided by the content producer. So just click maybe just a couple more examples. This is an example of a movie. You're watching Skyfall, and you have a number of things there. You can pull information over like this, which is you're hearing the soundtrack in the background, and it identifies that, and Adele gives a little information about Adele, all coming from Wikipedia here. So it's just found this information and presented it. And you're navigating it around with your hands, so or from your phone doing this. So it also brings product placement things that are in there. It also brings up, even like Facebook, for example. I think it shows example of this is from Wikipedia. This is some basic information. So it's all bringing to you this information floating in space and navigating it. Another example, maybe the last one here would be golf. So. Well, we'll skip past golf.
Japan, which lies
sorry,
within
this is news.
has deployed interceptors
So I love this kind of
around Tokyo.
comparison
Most
thing too,
people
where
living there,
basically
political and military
you're
tension
watching
hasn't affected
Sky
their
News in the
daily
background,
lives.
but if
Sky
you're
News
able
bosses
to
in
move down,
Scout
and I have a
Reports.
subscription to the New York Times, which has identified that what they're talking about is the Korean Missile Crisis. So I can actually pull across New York Times and see other things from the New York Times or from Sky. In that case, we went also to the Sky app. So these different sources are available to kind of look at and compare in a news event. The way that you navigate is through gesture, but in I already mentioned that before. What I would like to say about that is that is the element that I think profoundly is like a look back to the ancient. I've done myself quite a bit of work in gesture, particularly gesture for television, and I did work with the team that was involved with Minority Report, which is where I think for a lot of the audience that's out there, we became more familiar with gesture from that movie, from what was done there, and it struck a chord with the audience. This is my hand gesturing there. What's interesting about gesture is that it's something that is profoundly simple and natural. What it's replacing is a world of interaction that has been buttons and graphics and kind of sophisticated, kind of complex things that you had to learn. But when you actually, like the thing that I just showed you, if you're able to see something, move it over there and it opens up automatically as something else, just by gestures. And we're all familiar with that on the phone, our smartphones. That's a pure thing, a gestural thing. And gesture has been with us. I can guarantee that if we could play a video from 3,000 years ago, that mankind was pointing to things, and they were moving with their hands, and they were pointing and touching things. That gestural thing is a pure, innate, simple human thing that we've gotten back to. So it's almost like we've gone from the ancients have done this, and we've all done gesture for a long time. Then we got very complex, and now we're going right back again to something very simple. And I point to what I mentioned with the movie Her, that the devices are going away. We don't need the devices anymore. We can just sort of see it, hear it, voice it, and that's the new world. So the three films that I've been talking about just a moment ago have been Minority Report, and that view was around the early part of 2001 in there, 2002. More recently, Iron Man, which took some of the things away. And then I love the scenes in the beginning of Iron Man where Robert Downey Jr. is going to define himself. So he calls up and he sees this stuff and moves it around with his hands, which is getting away from some of the interface elements. And then certainly in the movie Her, which everything kind of disappears that we think of as digital, and we just experience it. So it's this ancient idea of things that are transparent, they're invisible, integrated and seamless. In the movie Her, you could say that if you've seen it before, it's a man wearing regular glasses. These are not augmented regular glasses, they're just glasses for his vision. and he's talking. And that's the digital activity that's in the film. So I would leave you with a question, and I would say, will we see interfaces at all in the future? Will they go away? And it's something that I'm trying to work on in the research, is to try to say, let's take the interface away. Let's try to achieve that vision that had been suggested by Spike Jonze in the movie Her.